What's Lane Kiffin going to do next? We'll predict that right now. First things first, make sure you're subscribed. College football, nothing but college football. Whenever Lane Kiffin announces his decision, whether it's I'm going to LSU, I'm going to Florida, I'm staying at Ole Miss, whenever he gives us anything definitive to move off of, we will have a reaction for you on this channel, so make sure you are subscribed. So here's what we know about Lane Kiffin and his status and the whole situation in Oxford as it stands right now. There's a lot of intel and a lot of whispers and rumors. Here's what we know to be true. A decision is coming after the Egg Bowl. Now, is that Saturday morning? Is that Friday night? I don't know. But Keith Carter, AD for Ole Miss, put out a statement and said, me and Lane have had some pretty pointed and direct conversations. We're going to have something clear about his future after the Egg Bowl. Okay, that's one fact. The other fact is Florida, LSU, and Ole Miss are all prepared, and it sounds like have made to some respect, competitive and top-tier offers, both from the financial side of things for Lane Kiffin. Like the report from Ross Dellinger is LSU's offering right around $90 million to get into Baton Rouge. Also, on the roster support side of things, when it comes to NIL and acquiring talent at the top level, sounds like they're all willing to be in that $25 million range. That's also what we know. We also know his family has visited Gainesville and Baton Rouge in the last week or so. So if you thought that the Gainesville and Baton Rouge talk was all just smoke, no, that was a real thing. If you're visiting potential cities you'd live in if your dad took a different job or your husband took a different job, I think that has to be said out loud. Okay, I don't know exactly which members of the family it was, but family members visiting those places during a bye week, not nothing. It's not nothing, okay? Now, I said this already in the What We Know segment around Lane Kiffin, but I want to just rehash it for those that are watching the full show. The further we get around Lane Kiffin not giving Ole Miss a definitive answer, the less likely I feel like he's going to stay in Oxford. Now, full transparency, before this all started, I said, Lane Kiffin, why would you leave Ole Miss? You're winning there. You're going to be a playoff team this year. If you're a playoff team this year with a D2 quarterback, what can't you accomplish in Oxford? Be honest, too. Like, there's a small part of me that, like, was hoping and maybe still hopes he stays at Ole Miss. I think that'd be super fun for Ole Miss. I think it'd be fun for college football to have a guy say, no, you know what? I love those logos and what they are, but I love our logo a whole lot more here in Oxford. I love what I built here. I'm going to stay here. I'm not leaving. That's what I was selfishly a little bit here rooting for, and also kind of just thought was going to happen by nature of what made sense to me. Now, again, as we get further into this, at every turn, Lane Kiffin has had a chance to shut it down and say, I'm staying in Oxford. I'm not leaving. And he hasn't done that. The longer it takes to get an answer, usually the less likely you are to like the answer you arrive with. The examples I've given before are whenever you're interviewing for a job. If you've gone through 18 interviews and sent 24 emails back and forth, and you're sending the majority of those emails, like, you're probably not their first choice for the job, brother. Unfortunately, that's the way it's going to go. In dating, same deal. If you're texting them all the time and they're not texting you, if you're inviting them out a lot of the time, but they're like, oh, I'm busy that Tuesday, I'm busy that Friday, that Thursday. You're busy every single day of the week? What's up? Dude, take a hint here. That's kind of where I arrive on this whole thing with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. I am taking the hints when he jumps on McAfee and is not saying anything about staying at Ole Miss. Okay, we all kind of understand where this whole thing is headed, I think, based on the vibes of it all. Now, there's the Lane Kiffin science where you say, yeah, finish the Egg Bowl. He takes the mic. I was never leaving. I'm not leaving. I can't believe you fell for that. Like, that's definitely still in play because it's Lane Kiffin, all right? But there's a certain part of this where you try to account for the Lane Kiffin science of this as much as possible, but also you don't hang your hat on it. So let's go ahead and just assume, based on what I'm reading the tea leaves to be saying here, he leaves Ole Miss. That's how I feel about it, and that's just my take here. So then it becomes, is it Florida or is it Ole Miss? Here's my question when it comes to predicting this thing. How much does the Florida job mean to Lane Kiffin? Speaking to the unquantifiables, speaking to his affection for Steve Spurrier, speaking to his history in the state of Florida, his family ties to the state of Florida, the fact that he coached at FAU, had a lot of success there. How much does just everything that comes with the Florida job mean to Lane Kiffin? Because to keep it a buck now, I think the resources are going to be pretty even across the board. I'd be wildly surprised. Again, we're recording this in real time, so if it changes before he makes a decision, we'll discuss that in real time as well. I'd be wildly surprised if LSU was pitching something that made a difference for Lane Kiffin that Florida wasn't pitching. Again, that's my own feel on this. I don't have intel on that. That's just how it feels to me. The reports are that they're all offering a pretty competitive, top tier, right in the same ballpark kind of contract and roster support. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm at on this. How much does the other stuff mean to Lane Kiffin? Because if it's like, man, I want to get back to a place I'm familiar with. I want to get back to a place where my dad coached in that state. Like maybe that's the end-all, be-all. He wants to wear the visor in the swamp and do that, and maybe that's the difference for Lane Kiffin. He ends up being the next head coach of Florida. Like that's the question I have. And if he ends up being the next head coach of Florida, my feel is that will kind of be in line with the logic as to why he would take that job. Removing myself from the trying to quantify what matters to Lane Kiffin discussion. If I'm leaving Ole Miss, a place that I have elevated now to be a college football playoff team, and again, I think you compete for national championships at Ole Miss by nature of what Lane Kiffin's done there. If I'm leaving that, I am walking away from that with the thought process that I'm going somewhere else to win multiple national championships. And so if that's the thought process, I think the best track record for that has got to be LSU. It's not knocking Brian Kelly, but everyone besides Brian Kelly, it feels like, wins a national championship in Baton Rouge. At Orgeron, Les Miles, Nick Saban, obviously. Like that place maybe isn't more ready-made than Florida to win right now based on the roster, because Florida's got a lot of pieces on that roster. Make no mistake about it. You can retain that. You can be a wagon tomorrow. But like over the course of the next couple of years in Baton Rouge, I think Lane Kiffin would be pretty well teed up and supported and in a spot where he can win a national championship. And you got to think, if you're Lane Kiffin, when it comes to taking that job, you'd like to think you take it with the eye of winning more than one national championship. That's not me predicting it. I'm just saying that's probably the thought process if you're a one Lane Kiffin. So going back to what I said, the track record of national championships and the ability to do that and the pattern of doing that, to me, makes me feel like that's where Lane Kiffin will ultimately end up at. Not going off intel, going off vibes, going off of my logic. So my prediction is Lane Kiffin ends up being the next head coach in Baton Rouge and is wearing purple and gold at some point in time before next season. So how does this all play out? Is it game finishes, post-game presser, thanks Ole Miss, says is something he'll think about over the course of the next few hours, Saturday morning, hey, Lane Kiffin's not going to be the next head coach at Ole Miss, and then we get like a couple of weeks down the road and he takes the job at LSU? Or is it game finishes, a few hours later, we got the report, Ole Miss is no longer going to have Lane Kiffin on their staff. He's gone to take the next head coach or the next head coaching gig at LSU. I'm not sure about the semantics of it all. My feeling is it'll probably be I think it'll be more of like a Saturday morning thing, is just my guess, because I have to think I think we'll get the news rather that he's not going to be the next head coach or not going to be head coaching at Ole Miss in 2026, and then we'll see what Ole Miss does from there. And then eventually we'll get his next destination. I think we'll get the breakup and then the new destination when it comes to Lane Kiffin. But when it comes to the fit for LSU and Lane Kiffin, it's hard to not see that thing being an absolute rocket ship. And I'll say this, y'all know those couples that are both a little bit outside of their gourd. He's loud, she's crazy, he rides motorcycles. They're both a little bit nuts, right? And on paper, you're like, that can't work. There's no way that can work, right? That fan base with how insane they are, Lane Kiffin, how off the beaten path he is, there's no way that works. But then, like, you see them together, like, oh my gosh, they complement each other so well. They're both so crazy. They're both so different. They're both so outside of the norm to where actually it works perfectly. And I think that would be LSU. The cool factor of Lane Kiffin, the brand of LSU, the skill player history and track record of LSU, and the quarterback track record with Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels as of late, and the ability to attract that when it comes to Lane Kiffin and what he could do on the recruiting trail, just the overall personnel on the defensive side that's available in Louisiana, being able to shut down the state of Louisiana and recruit at the highest level. People talk about Brian Kelly being on the beach during the most important times of acquiring talent. They still recruited top 10 class for top 10 class. Lane Kiffin is not going to be on the beach. He's going to be recruiting. How high will LSU finish in the recruiting rankings and the portal rankings? I don't know, but the point I'm trying to make here is it's so crazy and it's so extreme on both sides of this to where I think it would work, and I think it would ultimately equate to both sides of that equation getting what they want. So again, our prediction, LSU ends up landing Lane Kiffin. He's the next head coach. You first get the news he's not going to be back at Ole Miss, and then eventually you get the news that Lane Kiffin is going to be the next head coach in Baton Rouge. Crazy times, man. Crazy times in the world of college football. Cato, this is something you and I have talked about, man, on the air, off the air. Like, it's not just something we talk about on the show. It's legitimately filling our day-to-day conversations, our text message history as well. You got a take here, man, on Lane Kiffin and just the way it all is currently trending for him, whether it be Florida or LSU, or just your thoughts on the situation in general?
Yeah, my biggest take, JD, is I just wish there was a way that he could see this through with Ole Miss and then be able to kind of sort out his options. I don't know if we'll ever exist in the college football landscape and calendar where there's space for roster turnover and coach turnover to be kind of season to season. You'd like that because we're seeing how early these coaches are getting fired. We're seeing the portal got moved to January, but it's still kind of offset from when these coaches are going to be on the move and the playoff. It's kind of a mess, and I kind of hate it for Lane. And thinking more about Lane in this situation, my question for you, JD, is do you think right now, as of Tuesday, he knows what he's doing?
Dude, I don't.
Like, because I don't think I would. Like, I don't. Like, I think trying to balance this year's team being so special, making it as far as they've come, D2 quarterback leading you, looking like through the playoff. I get that there's people in his corner probably telling him LSU is a great job. We see their history. You could be in the playoff / national championship many times in the future at LSU, but I have tunnel vision. Like, I wouldn't be able to look past right now. And you might be able to say, hey, an LSU will make it to the playoff all the time. That's easy to say. Right now, his team is set up to do that. So
yes.
For me, like Tuesday for me, going into the Egg Bowl, it'd be weighing on me, man. I'm curious if you think he thinks right now he knows his next move or not.
I think Nick Saban brought up a great point on College Game Day where he's like, it's not a Lane Kiffin thing. It's a college football calendar thing. Just to what you said, Cato, it's tough because it puts him in this spot where if he's going to leave Ole Miss, it sounds like LSU and Florida kind of want an answer. Ole Miss obviously wants an answer. And if he's going to not coach Ole Miss next season, do you keep him around for the playoff? And if you're not keeping around for the playoff, what do you do if you're the committee? What do you do if you're on that staff? What do you do if you're that? Like, it opens this can of worms where it's like, who's really at fault here? Lane Kiffin's got to make a decision. These teams want a head coach. You kind of go back to the powers that be when it comes to designing the calendar that makes zero sense, dude. It's just it's a bizarre spot. So to answer your question, I don't think he knows. You're probably prepping for Mississippi State and trying to finish out the season 11-1, right?
Yeah, Frisky, Mississippi State at that. Yeah, I think it's tough, too, because we've been talking about Lane a bunch and talking about how he's relishing this a little bit. We think Lane likes the drama. He likes being in the center of attention. He likes being cryptic on Twitter. But even if he wasn't any of that, this is still a very hard decision. And I think that there's a level of empathy I have for him having to make this decision and balancing what he has to deal with right now. But even if it was just like personality and everything aside, like there's not really a great way for him to go about this, being that his team is a playoff contender. Like, unless you're saying like, hey, like Ole Miss, like I'm rocking with you, I'm gonna sign my extension. Very clear he's not doing that, and that's what is kind of opening up people's minds to him going to LSU, like you just predicted, or being on the move, because you'd imagine he would have already said, I'm staying at Ole Miss, because he has that opportunity. But even if he wasn't in the news, if he was just normal coach that's just like very cut and dry, like an old school coach that doesn't have any nuance to his game off the field, I think even still, like, how do you go about this to make all parties involved happy? You can't leave for a better opportunity. Leaving your Ole Miss team mid-season, mid-playoff run isn't a good look. Joining your new team, if you want to eventually leave, you're setting yourself back by staying with Ole Miss through the playoff run. Like, what do you even do? Like, even if he was like, hey, like, I'm not making my decision till we're done playing football. It could work out great if he stays at Ole Miss, but then, like, if you go 2 rounds and then go to LSU, you're behind the curve. Like, it's hard for me to please any, if all parties. Like, it's just a tough spot for him. I hope he just does what's best for him and his family at this point, and hopefully cares less about, like, hey, like, LSU, like, wait, like they're not going to have to wait because he's doing this press conference.
Sure.
But to me, the college football schedule alone has put him in a tough spot, and I think thankfully he's kind of equipped to be in a tough spot. He's been in plenty of tough spots in his career, and you just wonder if he's going to be in another one now in this situation where there is a fan base, or maybe even 2, that are upset once he makes this decision. Like, is he going to do this Tennessee style where he's having a press conference to let a fan base know he's leaving, gets a ton of backlash from Ole Miss? vice versa with the other fan bases that are now invested in this, that think they're in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes. Someone's going to get hurt here is all I'm saying. There's a fan base that's going to be hurt after this, maybe two, maybe all of them if he decides to just roll the dice completely and like shock the world and go to the NFL. But in a tough position, think he's equipped for it. Hope he does what's best for him. And yeah, rooting for this Ole Miss team to stay intact through the playoff because I do think they're a contender.
That's the thing is, like, I'm taking bullets on social media every time I post something about why Kiffin to LSU makes sense for LSU or why Kiffin to Florida makes sense for Florida. It's like Ole Miss fans are just like, are you rooting for this? You want him to leave Ole Miss? Like, no, I'm rooting for him to stay at Ole Miss, dude. I don't want him to leave Oxford. It'd be awesome if he stayed at Oxford and just said, I'm going to keep doing my thing out here and we'll go through the portal and I'll get more money and we'll build better rosters. Like, I don't know. The whole thing is interesting. Cato, here's a question for you, though. I know we got to move on, but I want to get this take from you.
Last one.
What are the odds we get okey doked here, man? What are the odds? I mean, kids flip commits all the time. What if Kiffin, not like intentionally, but like in good faith, says, I got to see this through here in Oxford this season. We've done all this work. It's not fair to the team. I want to just finish through here. If I'm that good a coach, other jobs will be available in the future that I want to take. Like, it doesn't feel right to leave. He says that. That ends up being what comes out on Friday. And LSU is like, great. We'll wait. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure you were more highly recruited than me, so people probably like still were calling your phone after you committed. But it's like, cool, we got time. Like, yeah, we can wait till after the playoff if it means having another chance at Lane Kiffin. Yeah, we'll be right here, Lane. We'll keep on recruiting. We'll keep on knocking down your door. We'll keep on throwing numbers at you. Like, we're fine to wait. And if we get burned, so be it. Blake Baker will be our next head coach, and we'll roll with him for a couple of years. Like, how that feels outlandish. And I don't know that it's like what's going to happen, but I think it's like almost a fourth door that isn't being discussed, probably for good reason. But what do you think the percentage chances are that we see that maybe happen when it comes to Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, and these potential suitors?
Yeah, so for this last one, before we get to the rest of the previews, I'm going to put my conspiracy hat on. Conspiracy Cato's here. So I've thought about this. If I'm Lane Kiffin and I know I want to stay at Ole Miss, and two teams that want my talents are in the SEC, why not drag them along? Like, I would do that. Like, I would try to push it back as far as I can because it's going to impact my competition's coaching search. The coolest press conference ever is if he goes to the mic and says, I really enjoy coaching this Ole Miss team. Shout out the administration. This year has been special, and it's going to continue to be special this year and beyond because I'm not leaving. We're going to win a championship this year. Go Rebs. Like, that's the sickest, like, mic drop moment. Oxford's lit. That would be super cool. And as a result, by, like, playing this game, like, LSU and Florida are exhausting their resources trying to reach out to Lane's camp, get the right dollar amount, find out backup plans. Like, what if this whole time he just wanted to be the center of attention and is just making LSU and Florida drag their feet, slow them up in their recruiting and their whole process and what they've got going on? That's what I would do. For me, if I knew I was staying at Ole Miss, you can sign the extension or just go to the AD and be like, hey, ball's in my court right here. If LSU wants to wait, we can keep making them wait through this playoff run. You know what I mean? So that's conspiracy corner for me. But I think that you can't rule anything out with Lane at the end of the day. And I think if it's not Lane Kiffin, we're not having this conversation. Like, if this is about Mike Elko, I'm not going to conspiracy corner about what outlandish things he could possibly do in this situation. He doesn't have a Twitter feed that would make us think that he might have some malpractice here or doing whatever he does to have his way here. So, yeah, man, it's an interesting situation. And I feel like Friday, no matter what the announcement is Saturday morning, whenever he decides to do it after the Egg Bowl, it's going to be one of the bigger moments, I think, in recent college football history. And I feel that way, too, just from watching the Lane Kiffin documentary just recently and seeing how many moments he's already had at press conference between the Raiders and Tennessee and USC. Like, his career has always been interesting, and this might be the most interesting chapter right now in the biggest crossroads. So, ready for history to happen, man. We'll see what he does. The decision, as the lower third says, biggest decision since LeBron.
It really is, dude. Or at least it feels that way to me. And when it comes to pre-planned decisions that we're going to get,
For sure.
It's fun, man. Good stuff, Cato. Appreciate that. That's that whole fourth door of Maybe he drags them on. Hey, we maybe cause LSU and Florida to fall behind the 8 ball when it comes to other options they could have. Also, like, this is another thought, and we'll get to these previews. What if Lane Kiffin just says, I'm not giving you an answer, Ole Miss? What's Ole Miss going to do, fire him? No, Lane, you can't keep coaching. He says, I don't know yet. I'm going to keep coaching. Fifth door. I don't know. There's a lot there, and there's a lot there because it's Lane Kiffin. There's a lot there because it's college football in 2025. College football still has the fastball, and we love it. So in the comment section, let me know you got Kiffin to Florida, to LSU, or is he staying in Oxford? Who knows? Who knows? But we'll find out together.